People love to lie about motherhood. They say children grow up and protect the woman who raised them. But sometimes your own child grows into the very danger you never thought you'd have to run from. That truth hit me at 2:07 a.m. My phone lit up on the nightstand, so bright it cut through the dark like a blade. I thought it was hospice calling to correct the mistake I'd secretly prayed for, that Milton wasn't gone, that the nurse had misread the silence in his chest. But the name on my screen wasn't hospice. It was my daughter-in-law, Keisha. She never called past 10. I reached for the phone, but it vibrated right out of my hand, clattering against the rug like it was trying to warn me faster than my bones could move. The message glowed in the dark. Keisha, grab your things and run. Don't trust your son. My breath didn't catch. It broke. I stared at those words so long the blue light blurred. My fingers were trembling when I typed back, "Me, you mean your husband?" The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then came back. I pictured her pacing, whispering so her children wouldn't wake. "Keisha, yes. Andre and his mistress, they're planning something." Mistress. 2 weeks after burying my husband, and already another woman's name had found its way into my family like rot under a floorboard. I felt something sour crawl up my throat. Before I tell you what happened next, I should tell you who I am. My name is Loretta Hughes, and I buried my husband of 42 years on a Thursday afternoon when the sky was too blue for grief. 7 days later, I sat in my dark bedroom staring at a message telling me to run from the boy I once held against my chest. If you're listening to me right now, drop a small heart in the comments, because this kind of night can crack open a mother's soul. My first instinct was denial. My second instinct was memory. The night before Milton died, the hospice nurse called me around 9:30 p.m. "He's asking for Andre," she'd said. "I called my son immediately. 'Baby, your daddy wants to see you.'" Andre sighed like I'd asked him to lift a mountain. "Ma, I got an early meeting. I'll swing by tomorrow if I can." Tomorrow never came. Milton's chest stilled at 4:12 a.m. Back then, I buried the sting under excuses for my son. Busy, tired, overwhelmed. But at 2 a.m., with Keisha's frantic words filling my screen, that memory felt different. Raw, unfiltered. Another message landed like a stone on my lap. "Keisha, please, don't ask questions. Don't tell him I warned you. Just pack and go." I looked around my room like I had never seen it before. The dresser Milton built from oak, the cherry wood box where we kept every important paper, the overnight bag still sitting in the corner from those long hospice nights. My world suddenly felt borrowed. I swung my legs out of bed, the floor cold enough to bite. The house was too still, too watching. I grabbed the lamp switch for a sliver of light and froze. A sound moved through the hallway, not a creak, not the sigh of old wood settling after a long day. A step, slow, heavy, deliberate. Someone was in my house. I held my breath, my hand still hovering over the lamp, afraid even the click of the bulb would draw something toward me. Then it came again, floorboards shifting under real weight. Closer, much closer, the kind of sound that lets a mother know, this is not the wind. This is not the walls. This is someone standing where they don't belong. And just as my heart climbed into my throat, the hallway fell silent. Too silent, right outside my bedroom door. The sound in the hallway stopped as soon as I froze. No second creak. No shadow under the door. Just my own breathing, loud in my ears. I stood there with my hand still on the lamp switch, listening so hard my head hurt. The fridge hummed in the kitchen. A car rolled by somewhere far off. Nothing else. The house went back to the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're the one trespassing. My phone buzzed again in my palm. Keisha, are you awake? Please say something. I turned the lamp on, just enough light to push the corners of the room back. The overnight bag in the corner looked smaller than it had a minute ago. I sat on the edge of the bed and hit the call button before I could talk myself out of it. She answered on the first half ring. Ma. Her voice was already shaking. Are you okay? I'm sitting up, I said. My own voice sounded thin. Tell me what you meant. Slow. There was a rustle on her end, like she was moving into another room. A door closed soft. I heard a baby sigh in the distance. Then quiet. It's Andre, she whispered. It's the way he's been talking. The calls. The messages. I didn't want to believe it, but I can't ignore it anymore. My mouth went dry. What messages? He left his phone on the counter. Weeks back. I wasn't snooping. She rushed the words out. I just went to set it on the charger, and a preview popped up. A woman named Brielle. The name landed cold. I had never heard it in my life, but it came with a weight, like cigarette smoke in a clean room. What did it say? I asked. A pause. I could hear her swallow. It wasn't just one. I went into the thread after that. I know I shouldn't have, but they were talking about you, about everything Milton left. My thumb traced a little circle into the comforter. Use the words you saw, Keisha. She took a breath. She wrote, once she's gone, everything will move smoother. Her voice dropped even lower, and Andre said, we just have to get things in order, so there are no obstacles. That word again, obstacle. I felt it in my chest. Another sound brushed against my memory, not from the phone this time, but from months ago, sitting at our old dining room table while papers were spread out between me and Milton. We were arguing over whether to sell one of the rental properties. My head had started to pound, and I told them both, I just need a minute. Andre pushed his chair back. This is why you shouldn't be the one deciding stuff like this, he'd muttered. You're too emotional for big decisions. Back then it felt like a slap disguised as advice. I'd laughed it off and told him, you'll understand when you're older. He was already grown. I should have heard what he really meant. You're in the way. They don't say anything straight, Keisha went on. It's like they're careful. She says things like, she's fragile. That's to our advantage. Or, once everything's in your hands, we'll be free to build the life we talked about. Her voice cracked. You know what he told me when I asked him what he meant about being free? He said I was overthinking, and I should just enjoy the idea of us being comfortable. I pressed my free hand to my chest. The cotton of my nightgown felt too thin. And you're just now telling me? I've been scared, she said. I kept hoping I was reading it wrong. But then he came home tonight talking about how things would be easier once paperwork was done, and how you shouldn't be left alone with that kind of money. I asked what that meant, and he just looked at me like I was a stranger. A bead of silence slid between us, heavy as a stone. I don't know everything, she whispered. I just know he's not talking like a son, worried about his mama. He's talking like a man circling something that doesn't belong to him yet. The lamp flickered once, then steadied, I stared at the cherrywood box on my dresser, the one holding Milton's will, his insurance documents, the life they were now discussing like a puzzle to be solved. Don't confront him, Keisha said fast. Please, don't tell him. I told you. Just be careful. Pack some things. Keep your phone on. My tongue felt thick. Where is he now? He said he was going for a drive. I could hear the edge of panic sharpening her words. He's been pacing the house all evening, on and off the phone with that woman. He thinks I don't know her name, but I saw it. Brielle. I repeated the name in my head, fitting it next to my son's face and hating how well it stuck there. A faint light slid across my ceiling. I frowned and turned my head toward the window. The curtains glowed for a moment, then dimmed, then glowed again, slow, like someone easing down the street. I stood, phone still to my ear, and stepped closer to the glass. With 2 fingers, I parted the curtain just enough to see the street. Headlights crawled past my house, moving so slowly it didn't look like driving. It looked like watching. Andre's car. 2:18 a.m. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until Andre's car rolled all the way past the house and disappeared down the block. The quiet it left behind didn't feel like peace. It felt like someone had set a clock ticking in my chest. Ma, you still there? Keisha's voice was a thin thread in my ear. I'm here, I whispered. My fingers were cold around the phone. I see his car. She sucked in a breath. He said he was going for a drive. He's been different, Ma. Please don't open that door if he knocks. I don't know what he's capable of right now. I stared at the front door from my bedroom doorway, picturing the deadbolt, the chain, the wood Milton had sanded and painted himself. That door used to mean safety. Now it felt like the only thing between me and something I didn't have a name for yet. I need to call Terry, I said. Stay by your phone. I ended the call before I could hear the fear in her breathing anymore. My thumb moved on its own, finding Terry's name. My baby's name. The ringing seemed louder than it should be in the middle of the night. He answered halfway through the first ring, voice rough with sleep. Ma, you okay? Just hearing him made something in me loosen. Terry, I said, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted. I need you, baby. There was a rustle like bed sheets and a lamp clicking on. What's wrong? Are you hurt? I'm not hurt, I said. Not yet. I let that sit between us. Keisha called me. She's worried about Andre, about what he's planning. I don't feel right being here by myself tonight. He didn't ask what Keisha said. That struck me later. In that moment, all I heard was urgency sliding into his tone. Okay, Ma. Listen, don't scare yourself. I'll come get you. When? I asked. He hesitated. If I leave right now, Andre might notice I'm out on the road. I don't like the idea of us crossing paths if he's already circling like that. Let me wait a bit. I'll be there around sunrise, 6-ish. You can be packed and ready by then. I looked at the overnight bag in the corner, the one that still smelled faintly like hospital soap and Milton's cologne, trapped in fabric. I can be ready. Good, he said. His voice warmed a little, like he was wrapping me in it. We'll get you out of there, okay? You'll come stay with us for a while. A picture rose up in my mind, uninvited. Terry at 7 years old, standing in the doorway with big, wet eyes while I tried to leave for a work conference. He'd clung to my skirt so hard I'd had to sit on the bed and hold him until he hiccuped himself calm. "Why you gotta go, Mama?" he'd sobbed into my lap. "What if you don't come back?" "I will always come back to you," I'd promised, smoothing his hair. Back then, he believed that meant I could outrun anything, storms, distance, even time itself. There was a softness in him that never quite hardened, even when his shoulders did, and his voice dropped. Standing in my bedroom now, that memory wrapped around me like a shawl. For a moment, all I could feel was that little boy's arms and his fear of losing me. It made it easier to trust the man his voice belonged to now. "Terry," I said quietly, "you remember when you used to cry if I so much as packed a suitcase?" He gave a small, sleepy chuckle. I remember Simone clowning me about it when I told her. Said she wished she had a mama she missed like that. I smiled despite the knot in my stomach. "You were always the one who hated seeing me walk out the door." "And I meant it," he said. "You're not going through this by yourself, Ma. Just a few hours, okay? Lock up, lay low, don't answer for anybody but me." "I'm serious." His certainty slid into my bones, steadying me. For the first time since Keisha's text came through, I felt something other than raw fear. It wasn't quite safety, more like a ledge to stand on. "All right," I said. "I'll be ready." We hung up. The house seemed to inhale with me. Walls, floorboards, pictures on the shelves, all listening. I moved on instinct, pulled the overnight bag into the center of the room, folded 2 changes of clothes, my medicine, the silk scarf Milton always said made me look like first lady material. I went to the dresser and opened the cherrywood box, the familiar creak of its hinges sounding too loud. His will, the insurance documents, the deed copies. I slipped them into a plain manila envelope, then slid that into the bottom of the bag beneath my clothes. It felt like hiding a heart under skin. I walked to each window, checking the locks. The night pressed up against the glass, thick and dark. The street lamp at the corner buzzed like an insect. Andre's car was gone now, but the image of it crawling past my house sat under my skin like a bruise. My phone buzzed on the bed. A new message. "Terry, Ma, I mean it. Don't answer the door for anybody till I get there." A second bubble appeared almost immediately. "Terry, Mom, make sure every door is locked. Don't open for anyone." The sky was just starting to pale when his car pulled up. Dawn makes everything look softer than it really is, even fear. Headlights swept across my curtains, then died. A car door closed gently, like he didn't want to wake the street. My phone buzzed. "Terry, I'm outside, Ma." I'd been sitting in the armchair by the front window, my overnight bag at my feet, shoes already on. I stood slow, knees stiff from a night that hadn't given me much rest, and double-checked the manila envelope at the bottom of the bag. Still there. I didn't linger. The deadbolt slid back with a heavy click. When I opened the door, there he was, my baby boy in a grown man's body, hoodie thrown on over pajama pants, eyes still puffy from sleep and worry. "Hey, Ma," he said, stepping forward with his arms open. For a second, I just looked at him. The corners of his mouth, the line of his nose, the way his shoulders folded down toward me, echoes of that 7-year-old who once begged me not to leave. Then I stepped into his hug. He smelled like soap and outside air. His arms wrapped around my shoulders, firm but careful. "You okay?" he murmured into my hair. "As okay as I can be," I said into his chest. He pulled back to look at me, scanning my face like he was checking for bruises. You got your stuff? I nodded and picked up the bag. He took it out of my hand before I could protest. You don't carry bags when I'm here, Ma. You know that. Those words untied something low in my stomach. I locked the door, sliding the chain back in place like muscle memory, even though I didn't plan on being behind it tonight. The ride to his house was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm, not before one. The city was just waking up, trash trucks groaning, a jogger trotting past in a neon jacket, the sky streaked with a thin line of pink. You get any sleep? Terry asked, eyes on the road. A little. I lied. I didn't have space in me for the whole truth. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. Keisha always did let things grow bigger in her head. He said lightly, you know how she is. I watched his profile. She's scared. I said, that wasn't something she made up to pass time. He exhaled through his nose. Yeah, well, Andre been off. I'll give her that. But you don't need to sit in that house feeling like a target. He glanced at me. You're with me now. We'll figure this out slow. No need to panic. The word we settled over me like a blanket. I decided to hold on to that, just for the moment. His house sat on a quiet cul-de-sac lined with neat lawns and sleepy porches. Simone had picked out the place. I remembered her chattering about the hydrangeas when they first moved in, as we pulled into the driveway. I saw movement at the front window, Simone's face peeking out, then disappearing. Terry took my bag from the trunk before I could reach for it. Go on in, he said. Door's open. Simone met me just inside, tying her robe tighter around her waist. Her eyes were swollen like she'd been crying or hadn't slept much either. Ma, she said softly, pulling me into a quick hug that didn't quite land all the way. You okay? You hungry? I can make some eggs or something. I'm fine, baby, I said. Her body was there, but her eyes slid past my shoulder to land on Terry carrying the bag in. Just for a second, something crossed her face. Worry, maybe, or a question she was too scared to ask out loud. Terry set the bag down by the hallway. Ma's gonna take the guest room for a while, he said, until things calm down. Simone nodded too fast. Of course. Stay as long as you want. I'll freshen the sheets. She wiped her palms down her robe like they were damp. I touched her arm. Thank you for letting me land here, I said. I don't mean to bring any mess. She forced a smile. Your family. There's no such thing as mess. But her eyes went back to Terry again. This time he didn't look at her. He busied himself unzipping my bag, like the contents were somehow more interesting than the tension hanging between them. An hour bled into the morning without my permission. Simone moved around the kitchen, making coffee, sliding toast onto a plate I barely touched. Terry moved in and out of the room, taking a call in the hallway, answering a text near the back door, murmuring things I couldn't quite hear. I sat at their small dining table, watching sunlight crawl across the floor, feeling my pulse finally start to slow. Being in a house with voices and the clatter of dishes made everything feel less sharp. Safe was too strong a word, but I wasn't alone. For now, that was enough. Terry came back into the kitchen, phone finally tucked into his pocket. He poured himself some coffee, then leaned against the counter opposite me, studying my face like he was about to change the subject in church. So, he said casually, stirring his cup with slow circles, we'll call a lawyer later, get some advice. Make sure everything stays straight. That sounds wise, I said. He nodded, eyes on the spoon. Then he looked up, and in that 1 second I saw something new, curiosity with an edge I hadn't seen on him before. Ma, he said, like the thought had just occurred to him. How much did Dad really leave you? I didn't answer him right away. Terry's question just sat there between us, floating over the sugar bowl and the half-eaten toast. His tone was light, but something under it pressed against my skin. How much did Dad really leave you? I took a sip of the coffee, though it had already gone lukewarm. Enough for me to be all right, I said slowly. Enough that I don't have to lean on nobody. He watched me over the rim of his cup. You know, I'm not nobody, Ma. I know who you are, I said. I also know what happens when too many details start passing from mouth to mouth. A muscle jumped in his jaw, then relaxed. He smiled, but it never reached his eyes. Fair enough, he said. We'll let the lawyer sort the numbers. As long as you're comfortable, that's all that matters. Simone set a plate of eggs on the table a little too firmly. Y'all need hot sauce, she asked, voice bright in that way people use when they're patching over something. We pretended to eat. We pretended everything was normal. When Terry excused himself to take a call in the other room, Simone fussed with crumbs that weren't there and asked if the guest room was warm enough. My body was in that kitchen, but my mind had already gone down the hall to my bag. When I finally had space to myself, I carried the overnight bag into the guest room and closed the door gently. Morning light slid through the thin curtains, laying a pale stripe across the bedspread. The room smelled like detergent and a faint trace of Simone's vanilla lotion. I set the bag on the mattress and unzipped it. Right away, I knew someone else's hands had been inside. I fold things a certain way, tight rectangles, edges lined up. My mother taught me that when I was a girl with 2 dresses to my name. Now the sweater on top lay crooked, one sleeve twisted. The scarf Milton loved was half out of its fold, the corner caught in the zipper teeth. I peeled the clothes back layer by layer. The jewelry case that had sat dead center at the bottom was tilted to the side. The latch was not fully closed. It looked like a mouth that had started to speak and changed its mind. I opened it. One pair of gold studs was in the wrong slot. My wedding band rested in the middle instead of the top, like someone had hurried to put things back and guessed wrong. For a moment, I just stared. There are mistakes a person makes when they own something. Then there are mistakes a person makes when they are visiting it. My fingertips found the lining of the bag, searching. The manila envelope crackled under my hand, still pressed flat against the fabric. I dragged it up just enough to see the corner of a deed copy, then slid it back down again. Whoever had been curious had stopped at the shine of gold and not gone deeper. My breath moved in and out, slow and thin. I sat on the edge of the bed, palms on my knees, and let my eyes travel around the room. Framed prints on the wall, a small fake plant on the dresser, a folded throw blanket in a soft gray. Everything here had been arranged to make guests comfortable. Milton's voice rose up in my memory, not loud, just steady. We'd been sitting on our back steps one summer evening watching Andre and Terry argue over a basketball game in the driveway. I'd been proud listening to them talk about business plans and investments like grown men. Look at them, I'd said, thinking they own the whole world. Milton had hummed that low sound he made when he agreed, but didn't. Promise me something, Loretta, he'd said. if we ever get more than we got now, and I'm working on it, you remember this. Money changes people when they think they deserve it. I'd laughed it off. Our boys ain't built like that. They're human, he replied. That's all it takes. Back then, I called it caution. Tonight, those words felt like a warning I'd folded up and stuck in a drawer instead of reading. A floorboard gave a small complaint out in the hallway. I stood, suddenly aware that I'd been in the room longer than I meant to. I zipped the bag, smoothing the fabric flat, arranging the corner of my scarf the way I liked it. If somebody had been in my things, I wanted them to see I noticed without ever hearing me say so. When I opened the guest room door, the house had shifted back into its daylight rhythm. TV murmuring low in the living room. Simone moving in the kitchen. No sign of Terry. I stepped into the hallway and heard him before I saw him. Behind the half-closed door of the den, voice dropped low. I moved without thinking, my feet remembering the spots that didn't squeak on the floor. I told you, she's here, he was saying. No, she hasn't asked anything yet. I said I'm handling it. The words slid under the door, thin but clear. She hasn't asked anything yet. I stepped back from the den door before my breath could betray me. Terry's voice dropped even lower, too muffled now to make out the words, but the tone lingered, tight, pressed, purposeful. Not the tone of a son checking on his mother, the tone of a man managing a situation. I walked away from that door like a woman carrying glass. Slow, quiet, careful not to reveal what I'd heard. When I reached the guest room again, I closed the door gently, then reached for my phone with fingers that suddenly felt too warm. Keisha picked up on the first ring. Ma, she whispered. What's happening? Are you safe? I sat on the edge of the bed, pulse still thumping from what I overheard. I'm here, I said. I'm at Terry's. A long pause. And something don't feel right. My voice came out low, like it didn't want to leave my throat. I think someone's been through my things. Oh God, she breathed. Loretta, listen to me. Don't sign anything Terry gives you. I don't care if it looks simple or harmless. Don't sign. And don't repeat anything I told you. Not one word. The urgency in her voice tightened around my ribs. I'm not planning to, I said quietly, but you need to tell me everything now. Don't hold back. Another pause. I heard the hum of her refrigerator, the faint clink of a spoon against a bowl, and under it all, a trembling she didn't try to hide. I should have told you sooner, she said. I should have said something months ago, before Milton passed, before things, her breath shook, before I realized I married somebody I don't recognize anymore. I closed my eyes. Start at the beginning. Baby, it was small stuff at first, she whispered. Andre would step outside to take calls. He'd stay late at work, but his work phone didn't ping. He started dressing different, more cologne, new shirts he said were from sales that never happened. My stomach tightened. One night he left his phone on the couch. She continued. A message popped up. Brielle, just made it home. Nothing wrong with that, right? Except he snatched it up like it was a burning coal. I could hear her swallow. After that, things changed. He'd come home irritated, snapping over nothing, asking why I'd spent $50 on groceries, asking who I'd talked to. And when I asked him simple things like what time he was getting back, he'd say, "Stop monitoring me." My fingers curled against the bedspread. There were other things, she whispered. We used to go to church together. He stopped. We used to talk at night. He started turning his back the moment the lights went out. He stopped wearing his wedding ring for 2 weeks and told me I was too focused on symbols. Her breath shook again. I just kept telling myself it was grief, stress, anything but what it really was. What was it? I asked softly. His heart leaving our house. She said, those words, they sat heavy, too familiar, because I felt something leaving mine too. What do? I whispered. Stay calm, she said. Make no sudden moves. Don't tell Terry anything about what you found or what you feel. Act normal. Pack light. Keep your papers close. And whatever you do, her voice cracked. Don't trust either of them. Not Andre. And not Terry. My breath caught. Keisha, I don't know what Terry's role is. She said quickly, I don't. But I know this. Andre keeps saying things will be easier once details fall into place. And Terry's name comes up too often in those conversations. A cold shiver slid along my arms. She inhaled shakily. Just keep your head down. I'll help you figure this out. You're not alone. For a moment, all I heard was her breathing and mine, both uneven, both trying to build courage from thin air. I'll call you later, I said. Let me just move slow. We hung up. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the floor. The room was too quiet. No movement, no footsteps, no dishes clinking. Just a stillness that felt heavy instead of peaceful. I stood finally smoothing the front of my blouse, forcing myself to breathe like nothing inside me had cracked. I reached for the door, opening it with the same gentleness I'd used waking a baby. And that's when I saw him, Terry, standing in the hallway, not moving, not smiling, just watching me. His eyes, usually soft, were taut, unreadable, sharpened into something I didn't know. He didn't say a word. He just looked at me, like he was trying to figure out what I knew. We stood there in that hallway, me and Terry, with nothing between us but the air and everything we weren't saying. His face carried no obvious anger, no smile either, just a stillness I wasn't used to seeing on him. For a second, I wondered if he'd been there long enough to hear Keisha's voice on the other side of the door. Long enough to catch the edge in mine. You need anything, Ma? He asked finally, his tone even. Just getting myself together. I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to a woman on a different day. I might lie down a bit. He nodded once. All right. Breakfast'll be ready in a while. Simone's making grits. You always liked hers. The way he said it, like he was reminding me of something safe, rubbed against the image of my shifted jewelry and crooked clothes. The hallway light hummed overhead. He stepped aside to let me pass, his shoulder close enough that I caught a faint mix of his cologne and sleep. The house should have felt warm. It smelled like butter and coffee, something savory blooming from the kitchen. But every sound in it now felt like part of a test. The clink of a spoon, the low murmur of the TV Simone had turned on, the quiet of Terry's footsteps going in the opposite direction. At the table, Simone slid a bowl toward me with a small smile. I put extra butter, she said, just how you like. That's kind of you, I replied. Terry sat across from me, scrolling his phone with one hand, the other wrapped around his mug. His eyes lifted every now and then, not quite meeting mine. I watched the way his thumb moved, quick, confident, like he was used to holding things he didn't want anyone else to see. I decided to press, just a little. You remember when your daddy first started that delivery business? I asked, stirring my grits, though I wasn't hungry. He stayed up half the night some weeks, trying to make sense of all those routes and numbers. Terry glanced up. Yeah, he worked hard. He left a lot behind. I said, clients, contracts, all that. I worry sometimes, thinking about how it's all going to be handled. His shoulders tensed. It was a tiny movement, but I saw it. That's why I said we'll get a professional involved. He replied, no need for you to stress over those details. You got enough on your mind. I just like to understand what's happening, I said quietly, before anything is moved. He took a sip of coffee, eyes darkening a shade. You don't trust me to look out for you? I held his gaze. I didn't say that. Simone's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. Her eyes flickered between us like she was watching a match slowly being lit. Then she cleared her throat softly. I can call my cousin later, she offered. The one that works at the courthouse. She might know a good attorney for, estate stuff. Terry's gaze cut to her, quick and sharp. We don't need the whole world in our business. He said, I already told Ma I'd handle finding someone. The words were calm enough, but that edge underneath was back. I didn't mean any harm, Simone murmured, setting her spoon down. Her fingers played with the hem of her sleeve, nervous energy, looking for a place to go. I watched him, not answering his question with words, but with silence. Sometimes silence tells more truth than a paragraph. I thought of another table, another meal. Years ago, Thanksgiving. Andre had just started working with Milton, walking around like a junior king in a borrowed crown. We disagreed over a vendor. I'd said I didn't like the man's energy. Andre rolled his eyes in front of everyone. You always go with feelings over facts. He'd said, it's not really your lane, Ma. The whole table went still. Terry put his fork down, then, jaw set. You don't talk to her like that, he'd told Andre. She'd built half of what you're walking around in. Show some respect. I remember the warmth that moved through me. That moment had lived in my chest as proof. No matter how Andre acted, Terry saw me. Terry understood, sitting at his kitchen table now, seeing the calculation flicker behind his eyes when money came up. That memory didn't comfort me. It hurt. It felt like grieving a son who was still alive and sitting right in front of me. After breakfast, Simone busied herself at the sink. Terry drifted down the hallway with his phone, saying something about checking on a few things. The house felt hollow in his absence, but not in a way that eased me. I rinsed my bowl, set it in the drying rack, then took my time wiping down a counter that didn't need wiping. From the corner of my eye, I watched the shadows shift near the den door. A low murmur started up, Terry's voice, softer than the one he used at the table. It pulled at me. I moved closer, staying just outside the frame of the doorway, letting the noise of the running tap cover the sound of my steps. Yeah, he was saying, she's here now. A pause. His tone sharpened, still quiet but firm. I told you, she'll sign. Just give me time. Terry didn't bring the papers right away. He let the day stretch itself out first. Small talk, TV humming in the background. Simone asking if I needed anything every hour, like she was trying to fill the air with errands instead of questions. I moved slow on purpose, watching everything. By late afternoon, the light in the living room had gone that soft gold that makes old pictures on the walls look almost alive. I was sitting on the end of the couch, my hands folded in my lap, when Terry walked in from the hallway with something tucked under his arm. A slim, dark blue folder. My stomach tightened before he even opened his mouth. "Ma," he said, putting on that gentler tone he used to say for bad news. "Got a few things I need you to look at, just so we can start getting stuff straight on your behalf." He laid the folder on the coffee table between us and patted it like it was harmless. Simone hovered in the doorway, drying her hands on a dish towel that was already dry. "What kind of things?" I asked. "Just some simple estate documents." He said, "Nothing complicated. Stuff that should have been handled while Dad was still here. Really." He sat down across from me, close enough that his knee nearly bumped the table. "I talked to a guy I know, and he said we should get ahead of any confusion. Make sure all decisions run smooth. Simple. Smooth. Confusion." Those words scratched at me instead of soothing. He flipped the folder open, pulling a stack of papers out. They were clipped together neatly, edges squared, like someone had spent time making them look organized. My heart ticked a little faster. "Look," he said, and slid the top page toward me. His hand stayed on the bottom half of the sheet, fingers spread. "This one just says you want help managing everything so you don't have to run around to banks and whatnot. Just formalizes what's already true." He read the first line out loud, his voice skipping over the heavier words. When his finger moved down the page, it covered the smaller print, thick, tight paragraphs in the middle. Every time my eyes tried to drop there, his hand shifted with them. "Then this one," he continued, already pulling the next document forward, "just clarifies who you'd want handling emergencies. Somebody the hospital can talk to, that kind of thing. You know how these places are. They don't listen to nobody unless it's on paper." He chuckled like that was a shared joke. My mouth didn't join in. I noticed how fast he turned the pages. No pause. No space for me to travel each line, let the ink settle in my mind. Every explanation came with a shortcut, just says, basically means nothing major. His thumb rubbed against the corner of the top sheet, a little twitch that didn't match the calm in his voice. Somewhere under all that movement, another sound slipped in, Milton's voice, clear as if he were sitting right behind me. "Loretta, paperwork is where people show you who they really are. Never sign anything when fear is sitting beside you." He told me that the day we closed on our first small house, my hand shaking over the dotted line because the numbers scared me. Back then, fear had come from not having enough. Now it came from the idea of having something and someone wanting to take it. I looked down at the papers again. The font was small. The lines were dense. Terry's hand was big. "Why we moving so fast?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Man just left this world, and we already stacking documents." He smiled, but it was tight. "We're not moving fast, Ma. We're moving smart. The world doesn't stop turning just 'cause we're grieving. People get funny around estates. You heard what Keisha said about Andre. We gotta protect you." The way he said we had changed. A week ago, I would have heard it as family. Now it sounded like a team I hadn't drafted myself onto. Simone shifted in the doorway. "Terry, maybe she wants to take her time," she said quietly. "It's a lot." He didn't look at her. "It's just signatures," he said. "Better to do it while she's clear-headed than when things get more complicated." More complicated. I felt my pulse in my throat. He slid a pen across the table, the click of it hitting the wood louder than it needed to be. "You trust me, don't you, Ma?" The question landed heavy, straight, no wiggle room. I lifted my eyes to his. For a second, I saw both of him at once, the little boy with tear-streaked cheeks begging me not to leave, and the man now pushing papers at me with someone else's script in his mouth. I do, I said slowly, enough to know I shouldn't rush letting this pen touch anything. His jaw flexed. That was all. No outburst, no protest, just that small betrayal of irritation. I'm not asking you to rush, he said, even though everything in his body contradicted it. Just sign the basic ones. We can go over the rest later. Maybe, I said, laying my hand on the stack instead of the pen. I need my glasses first. These eyes don't read fine print like they used to. The silence stretched. He forced a short laugh. Yeah, sure. Go grab them. We can knock this out together. But his smile didn't reach his eyes. I picked up the folder, the weight of it heavier than it looked, and stood. I could feel his gaze on my back as I walked down the hallway toward the guest room. Hot, tense, following every step like a shadow trying to stay attached. I closed the guest room door softly, sliding the lock until it clicked. The folder sat on the bed like a living thing, quiet, patient, waiting for me to open it without Terry's hand guiding my eyes. I sat down, steadying my breathing, and loosened the clasp. The first page greeted me with a bold heading, Designation of Healthcare Proxy. Under it, words that felt like cold fingertips brushing my spine. Appoint Terrence Hughes as sole decision-maker in all medical matters, including consent to procedures, withdrawal of care, and placement in residential facilities. Sole, withdrawal, placement, no spaces for other voices. Not mine, not my doctor's, just Terry. My eyes drifted to the signature line. Blank, but ready. I turned the page. The next document wore a calm title, but carried teeth underneath. Financial Management Authorization. Grant full authority to access, manage, and transfer funds, act in my stead, open and close accounts. Full authority. Act in my stead. The language wrapped around me like a rope. Milton's voice rose up in my mind, steady as ever. Never sign anything when fear is sitting beside you. I turned the page again. This one was worse because it sounded gentle. Residential care election. Approve relocation to long-term care when deemed appropriate by the appointed proxy. The proxy being Terry, not a doctor, not a panel. Terry, my chest felt tight, like the air had shrunk. I flipped to the next sheet, then stopped cold. Someone had traced my signature. Not ink, a faint, pressed outline. My name, copied by a hand that had studied how my pen curled letters. It looked like someone had practiced here, planned here. My fingers went still. Then I reached for the last page, a printed email. Andre's email address at the top. Terry's just below it. And under both, the name tied to every wrong turn in this nightmare. Brielle Stanton. The message was short, but every word cut. Once everything is signed and filed, decisions about her care and assets will rest with the two of you. She just needs to believe this is protective, not a loss of control. Use gentle language. People her age respond better when it feels like you're helping them, not taking over. Under that, Terry's reply. Got it. She trusts me. Andre is too blunt. I'll walk her through it. Just give me time. Give me time. The letters blurred for a second. I blinked fast, grounding myself. Both of them. My sons. Not one misguided child. Not one outside influence. Both. My mind went back to the boy Terry used to be, 13 years old, kneeling on the floor beside me while I massaged lotion into my hands after work. He'd wrapped his arms around my waist and said, "When you get old, Mama, I'm going to take care of you. I'll be the one pushing you around, telling folks to back off if they don't treat you right." I had believed him. That memory broke something inside me now. I spread the papers across the bed: medical, money, relocation, and the email. Together, they looked like a plan already written, a future someone else had designed for me. A sound slipped out of me, not a cry, not a gasp, just a quiet, hurting sound I barely recognized. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I needed my mind clear. I needed my breathing steady. I needed to remember whose house I was in and what these signatures would mean if I wasn't careful. I slid all the papers back into the folder, leaving the email on top, so I could see those 3 names like a wound. Andre, Terry, Brielle. The knock at the door made my heart jump. 3 soft taps. "Mom." Terry's voice came through, gentle but tight. "You've been in there a long time." He was standing right on the other side. "Mom, you've been in there a long time." His voice slid under the door and wrapped its hand around my throat. I looked at the papers laid out on the bed, my life flattened into signatures and sentences meant to move me out of the way, and then at the door, where his shadow blurred at the bottom. I forced my voice to soften, just taking my time. "Terry, these old eyes don't move as fast as they used to." A beat of silence, then a short, practiced laugh. "Yeah, I get it. Don't strain yourself. We can go over the rest tomorrow if you're tired." Tomorrow. I gathered the documents into a neat stack, slid them back into the folder, then tucked it under a sweater on the bed, like I could smother their meaning for a few minutes. My hand found the manila envelope in my bag, the real will, the deeds, and my fingers squeezed around it like it was a hand pulling me up from deep water. "I'm going to lie down a bit." I called. "My head is full." "All right," he said. "Holler if you need anything." His footsteps moved away, slow but not heavy. Listening steps. I stayed by the door until I heard the couch springs complain, the TV click on, Simone ask him something in a voice I couldn't catch. His replies came low and clipped. I sat on the edge of the bed and lifted my phone. My thumb hovered over Keisha's name for a full 10 seconds before I let myself press it. I didn't call. I typed, "Me, come get me tonight." The dots appeared, disappeared, then came back. "Keisha, tonight? Where are you?" "Me, Terry's house." Another pause. I could almost feel her heart racing through the screen. "Keisha, what happened?" I looked at the closed door, the folder on the bed, the faint imprint of my forged signature still burned into my mind. "Me, I'll tell you when I'm in your car. Can you be here late? Quietly." The reply came fast. "Keisha, yes. Tell me when." I thought of Andre's car crawling past my house at 2 a.m., of Terry saying he needed more time, of the way my jewelry had been disturbed. Tonight, time belonged to me. Me, 11:45. Wait 2 houses down until I come out. Headlights off. "Keisha, I'll be there. Just be ready." I set the phone down and breathed, slow and deliberate. Fear sat beside me on the bed, but it wasn't driving anymore. The hours between afternoon and midnight stretched long. I moved through them with a kind of quiet I'd never worn before. At dinner, I chewed slow while Terry talked about calling some people in the morning. I nodded at the right spots and pretended not to notice that every people he mentioned sounded more like someone on his side than mine. Simone kept glancing at me, like she wanted to pull me into another room and unzip some truth she'd been holding in her chest. Every time our eyes met, she dropped hers to her plate. "You okay, Ma?" she asked once. "I'm here," I said. That was the only answer I had. By 10:30, the house had dimmed. TV off. Kitchen wiped down. Lights snapped out one by one. I heard their bedroom door close, the low hum of distant voices, then the house settling into that late-night silence that made every small sound louder. I changed into a softer blouse and loose skirt, something that could hide papers against my skin. The folder on the bed waited. I opened it one last time, just enough to see those names again. Andre, Terrence, Brielle, then separated the most dangerous pages. The medical proxy, the financial authorization, the relocation clause, the printed email. I folded them tight, twice over, until they were the size of my palm. Then I slid them under my blouse, tucking them into the band of my slip at my waist, flat against my stomach. It felt like wearing a bruise. The manila envelope with Milton's will stayed at the bottom of my bag, wrapped in my scarf. When my phone screen blinked, the time read 11:40 p.m., and a message waited. "Keisha, I'm close." I texted back. "Me, 5 more minutes." At 11:52 p.m., I eased the guest room door open. The hallway was dark. A sliver of light leaked from under Terry and Simone's door. I held my breath and walked the way a person walks over ice they don't trust, slow, testing each step. The floorboards under my feet remembered me. I picked my path around the ones that protested. In the kitchen, the street lamp outside painted the counters in pale orange. I set my bag down, just long enough to slip my arms into my light jacket, then picked it back up. My fingers brushed the knob of the back door. When I turned, Simone was there. She stood in the kitchen doorway in a big t-shirt, bare feet, eyes shining in the dark. She didn't say a word. Her gaze dropped to the bag, then to my face. For a moment, the house held its breath with us. "I'm just going to get some air," I whispered, though we both knew I was carrying more than that. Her chin trembled. She nodded once. No questions. No warning shout to her husband. Just a single tear sliding down and her stepping back to give me room. It was the quietest confession I'd ever witnessed. "I know. I'm sorry." "Go." I opened the door. The night air hit my face cool and damp. 2 houses down, I saw the dim outline of Keisha's car, parked under a tree, with its lights off. I slipped out, closing the door gently behind me, the latch catching with a soft click that sounded louder in my chest than in the yard. My legs weren't as fast as they used to be, but they carried me down that driveway, along the sidewalk, and to Keisha's car with a purpose I'd never felt before. She leaned across to pop the passenger door open before I even reached it. "Get in," she whispered. "Hurry." I slid into the seat, pulling the door shut with careful hands. The documents pressed against my ribs like a second heartbeat as she shifted the car into gear and rolled us forward. I let myself look back once. Terry's front door opened. He stepped out onto the porch, scanning the street. Eyes narrowed just as his mother disappeared into the dark. The first thing I did when we reached the hotel was lock the door. Top lock, bottom lock, chain. The room smelled like stale air freshener and old carpet, but it was 4 walls that didn't belong to either of my sons, and that was enough for now. Keisha dropped her keys on the little table by the window. Her hands were shaking so hard they clinked loud. "Sit down, Ma," she said. "Please, just sit." I lowered myself onto the edge of the bed, my back to the headboard, my bag at my feet. The lamp cast a yellow cone of light over the blanket. Ugly pattern, thin fabric, but it lit the space in front of me just fine. I slid the folded papers from my waistband and smoothed them over my knees. The words that had tried to steal my life at Terry's house now sat between me and Keisha like evidence in a trial. "Show me," she whispered. I handed her the medical proxy first. Her eyes moved over the lines, fast at first, then slower. "This gives him everything," she breathed. "Every decision. They wouldn't need your permission for anything after this." "Keep reading," I said. She picked up the next one. "Financial authority." Her mouth tightened. "Full access," she muttered. "Acting in your place. He'd be able to move anything he wanted. Accounts, properties, all of it." Then the relocation form. Her hand flew to her mouth. "They were going to put you away," she said, voice cracking. "Somewhere you couldn't argue. Somewhere you'd just be out of the way." I laid the printed email on top of the stack. She stared at it for a long time before she picked it up. Her eyes traced with care now, word by word, taking in Brielle's instructions. How to talk to me. How to dress theft up like protection. How to use my age as an advantage. When she got to Terry's reply, "She trusts me. Andre is too blunt. I'll walk her through it. Just give me time." She sank down onto the mattress beside me like her legs had given out. Both of us sat there, shoulders almost touching, staring at my son's names, sharing a line with that woman's. "This is all three of them," she whispered. "Not just Andre. Not just Terry. All of them." The heat behind my eyes finally spilled over. It wasn't loud crying. It was the kind that slides down quietly because the body's too tired to make a scene. I could have forgiven stupidity. I said low, "A bad decision. One moment. This is planning." Keisha shook her head slowly. "They talked like this was business. Like you were a hurdle. Not a person. Not their mother." Her voice broke on that last word. "It didn't start like this," I said, almost to myself. "Not when they were young." My mind reached back, not for anger, but for the last time I'd seen Milton break. We were in our bedroom, door half closed. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, in his undershirt, elbows on his knees, hands over his face. I'd never seen his shoulders shake that way outside a funeral. I sat beside him. Did the doctor say something worse? He shook his head. When he finally looked up, his eyes were wet and red. "It's not my body I'm worried about," he said. "It's them. The boys." I asked. He nodded. "I worked so hard to make sure they had more than I did. And now all I can see is them tearing at each other over it when I'm gone. Or worse, turning on you." I'd cupped his face then, telling him our sons were good men, telling him love could keep their hearts straight. I believed that so deep it felt like fact. In this hotel room, with those signatures and schemes in front of me, I wished I had listened to his fear instead of just soothing it. Keisha reached for my hand. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I should have told you earlier." I saw pieces, but I didn't want to admit what they meant. I thought if I just stayed quiet, it would all straighten itself out. "It's not on you," I said. "They made their own choices." My thumb rubbed her knuckles. "But now that we see it clear, we don't get to pretend anymore." We talked for a long time without raising our voices, laying out the pattern, connecting Andre's late nights, Terry's new attitude, the careful way the documents had been put together. Every memory that once felt like a loose thread now lined up in a straight, ugly seam. My phone started buzzing halfway through. Terry's name over and over. I let it ring until it stopped, then let it ring again. The screen filled with missed calls and messages. Terry, Ma, where are you? Terry, this isn't safe. Call me back. Terry, we need to talk. I set the phone face down on the bed. After a while, the ringing stopped. Minutes ticked by. 10, 20, 30. No more calls. No more messages. The silence stretched out, long and heavy, wrapping itself around my chest. For the first time that night, the quiet felt worse than the sound. Terry had stopped calling. By morning, the hotel room felt too small for what I'd learned. The thin curtains couldn't keep the sun out, and the light made everything look harsh. The patterned bedspread, the cheap lamp, the stack of papers that had almost handed my life away. I didn't sleep much. I just lay there watching the ceiling, listening to Keisha breathe in the other bed, and waiting for my courage to grow into something I could use. We need somebody who knows what they're looking at, I said finally when she sat up rubbing her eyes. Somebody who's seen this kind of evil before. She nodded. I know a name. Malcolm Price. He helped my aunt when her ex-husband tried to flip a house out from under her mama. He doesn't play about elders. That was how we ended up sitting in a quiet office downtown, the kind with soft chairs and a tray of mints on the table. The walls held framed degrees and pictures of Malcolm shaking hands with judges and community folks. He was a dark-skinned man in his 50s, with salt at his temples and eyes that had seen more than I wanted to imagine. He listened while I talked. I told him about the late-night text, about Andre's car outside my house, about Terry's questions and the disturbed luggage. I didn't rush. I laid the folder on his desk, only when my voice reached the part where Terry slid it toward me like a favor. Malcolm put on a pair of reading glasses and opened it, spreading the pages out with careful hands. The room went quiet except for the soft shuffle of paper. He read every word. First, the medical proxy, then the financial authorization, then the relocation form. His jaw tightened at the outline of my traced signature. Finally, he picked up the printed email. When he finished, he let out a slow breath and sat back in his chair, glasses still on. This, he said, tapping the stack, is not confusion. It's coordinated. The words settled over me like a heavy coat. Coordinated what? I asked, my hands folded so tight in my lap my knuckles ached. Coordinated inheritance exploitation. He replied, they're not waiting for you to get confused, Ms. Hughes. They're trying to manufacture a situation where your confusion doesn't matter. Once you sign these, you stop being the decision maker for your own life. The truth of it hurt, but it felt cleaner than all the lies. So what do? I asked. We move fast, he said. First thing, I'm contacting your banks. We're putting alerts and temporary holds on any unusual activity. You'll still be able to access your money, but they won't. Second, we document everything here. He tapped the email. This is proof of intent. We'll keep multiple copies. Third, we file for protective orders where we can on your person and your estate. He glanced at me over the rim of his glasses. We will also make it crystal clear that any signature they try to use from this point on is suspect unless I've reviewed it. Keisha let out a breath she'd been holding. So they can't just move her somewhere? Not without consequences. Malcolm said, especially now that you came before they made you sign anything. His eyes softened a little then, and he took off his glasses. I'm glad you trusted your instincts, he said. Most people in your situation don't get to me this early. What happens to them? I asked. To my boys. That depends on how far they try to take this. He said, right now, we're building a wall. If they climb it, we'll talk about what it looks like when people answer for their choices. He was quiet for a moment, studying my face. You should know something, he added. You're not an isolated case. This pattern, I see it more than you'd think. I frowned. You do. He nodded. There was a woman last year, 78, only son, church usher, paid his tithes, walked his mama into service every Sunday. When she got sick, he brought papers to the hospital, called it routine. Malcolm's mouth tightened. Turned out he'd forged her signature on a power of attorney a month earlier. He'd been practicing, same as whoever traced yours. By the time she realized something was wrong, he'd already emptied 3 accounts and had a realtor lined up. My stomach turned. What happened to her? She came in here with a bag of crumpled documents and a look I'm seeing on your face right now. He said, we got some of it back. Not all, but enough that she could live without asking him for bus fare. He leaned forward, folding his hands. What I'm telling you is, this isn't just about your sons. It's about a sickness around money and power. You are not alone in this. The room blurred for a second, not from shock this time, but from the strange relief of hearing that my shame belonged to a pattern bigger than my living room. I raised them better than this. I said quietly, I don't doubt that, he replied, but I judge people by what they do, not what they were taught. He turned to his computer, fingers moving with surprising speed as he drafted something. Letters and numbers floated on the screen, forming the first shield between me and the people who shared my blood. We'll need copies of your IDs, he said, and I want you to open a new email account, something they don't know, and a separate phone if you can. From here on out, anything important comes through me first. No more conversations about money with them directly, not until this is secured. I nodded. The weight on my chest shifted, still heavy, but now some of it felt held. When he finished the first round of calls to the bank, to a contact at the clerk's office, he hung up the phone and looked at me, really looked. Loretta, he said slowly, there's a question I have to ask you before we go further. I met his eyes. Do you want this to stay quiet? He asked. Or do you want justice? I didn't answer Malcolm out loud right away, but the way my fingers tightened around those papers must have told him everything he needed to know, because by the time I left his office, the first walls were already going up around my life. It didn't take long for my sons to feel them. The calls started that afternoon. First Andre. I was back in the hotel room, shoes off, sitting on the edge of the bed with the TV muted on some news channel I wasn't watching. My phone lit up with his name. Photo from 3 years ago, him smiling beside Milton at a barbecue, arms slung around his father's shoulder like he'd never let go. I let it ring twice, then answered. Ma. He didn't give me time to speak. Where are you? Terry says you ran off in the middle of the night. What are you doing? Breathing, I said, thinking. 2 things I couldn't do properly in that house. He exhaled sharply. Here we go. So now you're running off like somebody's chasing you, listening to people who don't know what they're talking about. You're not well, Ma. You're grieving. That's all this is. There it was. The first stone. I'm grieving. I said calmly, I'm not confused. You disappeared. He snapped. Do you know how that looks? Folks are calling me, asking if you're okay. What you want me to tell them? That my mother's hiding in hotels because she thinks her own children are out to get her? That sounds crazy, Ma. That sounds like you need help. His choice of word made my stomach tighten. Help, like the kind you sign yourself out of but never really leave. What I need, I replied, keeping my voice level, is time and space. And for my choices to stop being made in rooms I'm not invited into. Silence crackled on the line. So this is about money, he said, finally. That's what this is. You think we're coming after your little nest egg, after everything Dad and I built. Your father did not build this to hand it to a stranger named Brielle. I said, the name tasting like metal, and he didn't raise you to see me as an obstacle. Another pause. Then his tone flipped, slick, oily soft. Look, he said, grief makes people paranoid. You're scared. I get it, but we're your sons. Nobody's trying to hurt you. Whoever's putting that mess in your head does not care about you like we do. He might have believed that line if I hadn't already seen the email with his name on it. I hope that's true, I said, for your sake. He scoffed. You need rest, Ma. That's all. We'll talk when you come to your senses. He hung up before I could respond. The room felt heavier when the line went dead. The relatives came next. My cousin Joyce called, voice sweet with concern and secondhand outrage. Baby, Andre just called me. He's worried sick. Says you're out here accusing him of all kinds of things. You know he loves you. Don't let folks turn you against your own. I didn't argue. I just let her pour her script over me until she ran out of words, then told her I was safe and ended the call. Uncle Leon texted. Andre says you're not yourself. Want me to come talk some sense into you? I didn't reply. Terry didn't call right away. He sent messages instead. Terry, Ma, this is getting out of hand. Terry, whoever you're talking to is confusing you. Terry, I was just trying to make things easier for you. Easier? I set the phone face down for a while, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the faint traffic outside. A part of me wanted to cry until there was nothing left in me to hurt. Another part sat very still, like a cat watching a door. The first message from a number I didn't recognize came that evening. No name, just a sentence. Unknown, you're making things harder than they need to be. I stared at it for a long time. Then another came. Unknown, you're letting people poison you against your own family. And a third. Unknown, families like yours don't survive when elders start acting stubborn. Brielle didn't have to sign her name. The voice of those texts matched the email, calm, condescending, like she'd done this before with other people's mothers. I blocked the number without replying. My hands were shaking, but not from fear alone anymore, from a new heat building under it. Later that night, when the sky outside the hotel had turned deep and the hallway had gone quiet, my voicemail light blinked. One new message. I pressed play and held the phone to my ear. At first, all I heard was breathing. Then Terry's voice, soft in a way he hadn't used with me in years. Mommy, he said. The word punched straight through me. He hadn't called me that since he was a boy with scraped knees. Hearing it now, poured into my ear like syrup over poison, made my skin prickle. Mommy, I don't know what people are telling you. He went on, voice hushed and careful. But I'm your baby. Remember? I'm the one who always had your back. Don't let them turn you against me. Sign the papers and we can put all this behind us. I'll take care of everything. Just like I promised when I was little. He was reaching back into my memory, digging for the softest parts and pressing on them. I love you, he added. Call me so we can fix this before it gets messy. The message ended with a long silence before the beep. I sat there, phone in my lap, fingers curled so tight around it my knuckles hurt. Somewhere under the ache, under the anger, a quiet decision settled in. They weren't going to talk me out of what I'd seen with my own eyes. The next afternoon, Malcolm called. Loretta, he said, voice measured, I just got a notice from one of your banks. Somebody tried to present paperwork this morning to access your account. Signature didn't match. The branch manager smelled something off. He paused. They flagged it as suspicious. He said, looks like someone tried to move on your money with forged documents. I always thought if the law ever touched my family, it would be from far away, jury duty notice, a parking ticket, somebody's cousin getting into a scuffle at a cookout. I never pictured sitting across from a detective while he laid my son's names on the table like evidence. Detective Vernon Tate wasn't loud. He carried a manila file and a tired kind of patience, the kind you get from seeing people lie to your face for a living. We were in a small conference room at Malcolm's office. 4 chairs, 1 window, water in plastic cups. Malcolm sat beside me, steady. Keisha sat on my other side. Fingers laced so tight, her knuckles blanched. Tate opened the file. All right, Miss Hughes, he said, voice calm but not soft. I want to walk you through what we found so far. You stop me if anything sounds unfamiliar. I nodded, my hands folded in my lap. Yesterday morning, he began, your eldest son, Andre, came to the bank with paperwork claiming you'd authorized him and your younger son to take certain actions on your accounts. The staff were uneasy. The timing, the wording, it didn't sit right, especially with your lawyer's warning flagged on your profile. He gave Malcolm a brief nod. That's when the branch called us. Tate went on. We verified you had not appeared with him. We compared the signature he presented with your known signature. Their fraud team called it highly inconsistent. That was the polite way of saying forged. Once the bank sent us copies, Tate said, sliding a few pages my way, we requested a judge's permission to seize and review certain devices connected to those attempts. Your son's emails, some shared files, a laptop at Terry's residence. What we found matches what you brought us. And then some. He turned 1 page. An email thread. Another page. A message about moving quickly before she changes her mind. Another about maximizing advantage. Words I'd felt but never seen written down like this. Andre says he was trying to protect you from yourself. Tate said, using the air quotes like they tasted bad. He described you as unstable, emotional, easily overwhelmed. He told us you were being influenced by outsiders. I buried my husband. I said quietly, grief is not a crime. No, ma'am, Tate replied, but forging documents is. He flipped another sheet over and tapped a name. Brielle Stanton, he said, We have multiple messages from her to both your sons, advising them on language, pushing them to get things finalized before you start asking too many questions. Keisha flinched at the name. I kept my eyes on the paper, so my hands wouldn't shake. Is she in custody? Malcolm asked. Tate shook his head. By the time we got the warrant to pick her up for questioning, she'd gone, emptied her apartment, quit her job, phone off. According to her neighbor, she left 2 nights ago with a man in a dark car and 1 suitcase. I didn't have to ask which man that was. My stomach answered for me. He set the file down and folded his hands. The point is, Miss Hughes, we have a pattern, communications showing intent, draft documents with partial forgeries, a physical attempt at the bank. It's not just suspicion now. It's a case. The word case made the room tilt for a moment. Malcolm's hand brushed mine under the table, a small anchor. While Tate talked through timelines and next steps, my mind slipped sideways, back to a night years ago, our 40th anniversary. Milton had rented a little hall at the church, strung cheap lights along the ceiling. The boys helped hang the banner. There were ribs, bad punch, and Luther playing too loud on somebody's speaker. Later that night, after everyone left, we'd sat on the back steps of our house, our feet bare, watching the yard lights blink out one by one. Our sons are different men inside, he'd said suddenly. I'd laughed, nudging his shoulder. Of course they're different. Andre's loud, Terry's gentle. They'd balance each other. He'd shaken his head, looking out into the dark. I'm not talking about personality, Loretta. I'm talking about what they do when nobody's watching. Back then, I thought he was worrying too much, seeing ghosts where there were none. In this room, listening to a detective describe my children's choices, I finally understood what he'd been trying to tell me. He saw something in them I refused to name. Where are they now? I asked Tate. Andre came in with a lawyer. He said he did a lot of talking that didn't match what we see on paper. Terry was quieter. He asked more questions than he answered. I swallowed. Are they going to jail? That's not decided tonight. Tate replied. Our job is to follow the evidence. Your job is to stay safe and let us work. I nodded, though nothing about this felt simple. He gathered a few pages and pushed them toward Malcolm. We'll need formal statements from both of you, he said, glancing at me and Keisha. Everything you remember, every offhand comment, every late-night call. It all builds the picture. We'll cooperate fully, Malcolm said. She's not going to be bullied back into silence. Tate studied me for a long second, not like I was fragile, like I was central. You understand, he said gently, that after this, nothing in your family will be the same. I met his gaze. Nothing in my family is the same now. He nodded once, like that was the answer he'd expected. We stood to leave. Chairs scraped softly against the floor. Keisha gathered her purse like it was the last solid thing she owned. My legs felt unsteady, but there was a steel in my back I hadn't felt in months. As we reached the door, Tate's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and picked it up. Yeah, he said. Uh-huh. Send it through. He listened for a long moment, eyes narrowing at something only he could hear. Then he ended the call and looked back at me. There's something else we found on Terry's laptop, he said. What they found on Terry's laptop wasn't some smoking gun with my name written in blood. It was something colder. Detective Tate showed it to us in a quiet room at the station, a folder of documents labeled post-transition plan. Budgets, timelines, notes about facility options for Loretta, and selling primary residence within 6 months. My house, written like inventory. My life, reduced to bullet points. There was a spreadsheet breaking down projected income once power transfers fully. Another line, split oversight. T handles day-to-day. A manages larger investments with B. They didn't use the full name there, just that single letter. But I knew who B was. It's clinical, Tate said. No emotion, just logistics. That part hurt the most. The legal part moved slower than my anger, but it moved. Malcolm filed what needed filing, the bank's fraud reports, and the emails, and that spreadsheet painted a story even Andre's mouth couldn't talk around. Andre found himself facing charges he couldn't charm his way out of. Attempted financial exploitation, attempted forgery, a fraud investigation that made some of his business partners step back. Terry's role was harder to look at because it leaned more on what almost happened than what did. But almost was enough this time. Between Malcolm's pressure and Tate's quiet persistence, the system did what it could. Formal warnings, protective orders, ongoing investigations. There were hearings I chose not to attend, filings I signed with hands that no longer shook. Lawyers on their side tried to spin it into a misunderstanding, a misguided attempt to help an aging parent. The documents kept saying otherwise. I had a choice to make about how far I wanted to push. Prison is one option, Malcolm said, but punishment isn't the only kind of justice. Protection is justice too. Distance, truth on record, your wishes in writing. In the end, I chose the kind of justice I could live with. We restructured everything. My accounts were moved into vehicles they could never touch, not with charm, not with signatures, not with late-night visits and soft voices. A trust was set up with strict conditions and separate oversight, managed by people with no reason to call me mommy when they wanted something. Provisions were made for my care that didn't involve either of my sons having any say. Keisha sat with me while I decided where the rest would go. Some to charity in Milton's name, some toward a scholarship at the trade school he talked about building but never got to, a portion set aside quietly for her children because they didn't ask to be born into this storm. As for Andre and Terry, their names moved off anything that meant power. No more sole decision maker. No more full authority. No more lines where their signatures could turn my life inside out. The law gave them boundaries. I gave them distance. There were apologies. Eventually, voicemails from Andre filled with phrases like misunderstanding and I was just trying to protect you from vultures. A letter from Terry, shaky handwriting on lined paper, talking about pressure and bad choices, an influence he never should have let in. They both mentioned Brielle like she was a hurricane that swept through their lives instead of a woman they'd invited in and handed a map. I read their words once. Then I put them in the same folder as the forged papers, not to hold on to the pain, but to keep the truth together in one place. We do not sit at the same table now. Holidays are quiet. I hear about them through other people's mouths. Andre looked tired. Terry asked about you. I nod, thank them for checking, and go back to my own food. Peace has a different sound at my age. It's not always laughter. Sometimes it's just the absence of new wounds. In my bedroom, in the small place I chose for myself after all this, there is one drawer that sticks a little when you pull it. Inside, under a stack of folded scarves, I keep a single photograph in a plastic sleeve. Terry at 7 years old. He's standing in the yard with grass stains on his jeans, missing teeth in the front, one arm thrown up toward the camera in mid-laugh. There's no calculation in that face. No spreadsheets, no emails, no talk of transitions. Just a boy who once clung to my leg because he was scared I'd leave. I don't look at that picture to torture myself. I look at it to remember what I'm mourning. Not the man who tried to sign me away, the child who existed before greed and fear, and somebody else's ambition got in his ear. I learned something I wish I never had to learn. Sometimes you save yourself and grieve at the same time. Sometimes the quiet ending isn't warm reconciliation. It's living long enough to draw a line and keep it. People expect betrayal to arrive loud. Mine came with my son's handwriting on papers he thought I'd sign blindly.